The stars looked the same as they always did. Cold, distant, uncaring. Captain Taehyun stared at them through the viewing window of the research vessel, Dandelion's Promise. He had been doing this job for 23 years now, looking at old things, finding lost pieces of history in the empty spaces between stars. His coffee had gone cold again. He didn't mind. After so many years in space, you got used to cold coffee and recycled air, and the constant hum of the ship's engines. These things became normal. What never became normal was the loneliness of deep space. The feeling that you were the only living thing for 1,000,000 miles in every direction. Captain, you need to see this. The voice belonged to Dr. Ji-woo. She was the ship's chief scientist. 29 years old, and already one of the best in her field. She studied dead civilizations. Species that had vanished from the galaxy long ago. Taehyun set down his coffee and walked to the research lab. The ship was small. Only 43 people on board. You could walk from one end to the other in 3 minutes. Ji-woo was standing in front of a large screen. Her hands were shaking slightly. That was unusual. Ji-woo never got nervous. What is it? Taehyun asked. A signal, Ji-woo said. Old. Really old. I found it buried in the background radiation, near the relay stations we've been scanning. How old? 800 years. Taehyun felt something cold settle in his stomach. 800 years ago, humans were still living on Earth. They hadn't even reached Mars yet. They didn't know aliens existed. What kind of signal? 8. Ji-woo pressed a button. Static filled the room. Then, through the static, came a voice. It was speaking a language Taehyun didn't understand, but the computer was already translating it. The voice sounded tired, desperate. This is the colony ship Gentle Dawn. We have suffered a hull breach in Section 7. Life support is failing. We have 12,000 souls aboard. We are requesting immediate assistance. Our coordinates are attached to this message. The message repeated. Then again. Then again. The same words over and over. The voice getting weaker each time. Taehyun listened to it 5 times before he spoke. Who were they? Velkari. Ji-woo said quietly. They were a peaceful species. Explorers. They vanished from the galaxy about 600 years ago. Nobody knows what happened to them. Now we know, Taehyun said. He felt angry. He didn't know why yet. Ji-woo pulled up more information on the screen. The signal was strong. It broadcast for weeks. Any ship within 5 light-years would have heard it. And, Captain, she paused. I checked the Galactic Assembly records. They heard it. Multiple species picked up this signal. The Thurians, the Kresh, the Ven, at least 40 different species. And nobody came. Nobody came. Lieutenant Hyun-woo entered the lab. He was young for a security officer, only 28. But he was good at his job. He took one look at their faces and knew something was wrong. What happened? One, Taehyun told him. Hyun-woo listened, without interrupting. When Taehyun finished, Hyun-woo was quiet for a long moment. Then he said one word. Why? Monwan. Why? I don't know, Taehyun said. But I'm going to find out. The coordinates are in a dead system, Ji-woo said. She pulled up a star map. No planets, no resources. Nothing valuable. It's between 2 major trade routes. But nobody goes there. It's just empty space. How far? 6 days at maximum speed. Taehyun thought about it. They were supposed to be studying old relay stations. They had orders. They had a mission plan. Going off course to chase an 800-year-old distress signal would make Earth Command very unhappy. But he kept hearing that voice. 12,000 souls. Please. Anyone. Set a course, Taehyun said. Ji-woo smiled. It was a sad smile. I already did. The next 6 days passed slowly. The crew knew something was different. Word spread quickly on a small ship. People whispered in the corridors. Some were excited. Others were nervous. They all knew the story now. The distress call that nobody answered. Engineer Sang-ho came to see Tae-hyun on the 3rd day. Sang-ho was 52 years old. He had 2 children back on Mars. He had been in space longer than anyone else on the ship. "The crew is with you," Sang-ho said. "Whatever we find out there, they're with you. Even if Earth Command gets angry? Especially then." Dr. Bora stopped by on the 5th day. She was the medical officer. She studied how different species survived in extreme conditions. "I've been reading about the Velkari," she said. "They were like us in many ways. They cared about family, about community. They made art and music. They were good people. Most people are," Tae-hyun said, "until they have to make a choice that costs them something." On the 6th day, they arrived. The system was exactly as Jiwoo had described. Dead. No star. Just a few frozen chunks of rock drifting in the darkness. And there, orbiting the largest piece of rock, was the gentle dawn. The ship was massive. It dwarfed the Dandelion's promise. It had been beautiful once. You could still see that in its design. Graceful curves, art carved into the hull. But now, it was dark, silent. A tomb, floating in the void. "Life signs?" Tae-hyun asked. "None," Hyunwoo said. "Not even bacteria. It's completely dead. I want to go over there." "Captain, I want to see them," Tae-hyun said. "I want to see the people that nobody came for." Hyunwoo nodded. "I'll get a team ready." An hour later, 5 people in spacesuits floated across the gap between the ships. Tae-hyun, Hyunwoo, Jiwoo, Sang-ho, Bo-ra. They found an airlock that still worked. It opened with a groan of old metal. Inside, the ship was frozen. Their breath came out in clouds. Their lights cut through the darkness. They found them in the central habitat. 12,000 Velkari. They had gathered together as the ship grew colder. Families huddled close. Parents holding children. They had died slowly, the cold taking them one by one. But they had stayed together until the end. Bo-ra examined the ship's systems. "The breach was small," she said. Her voice was shaking. "Any repair crew could have fixed it in a few hours. They didn't need much. Just someone to help." Jiwoo found the ship's log. She read it in silence. Then she read it aloud. The Gentle Dawn had broadcast their distress call for 47 days. They had received responses. Species had sent messages saying they had heard the call. They would analyze the situation. They would determine if assistance was viable. The messages stopped coming after 2 weeks. The Velkari kept broadcasting, kept hoping, until they couldn't anymore. "They were heard," Jiwoo said. "Everyone heard them, and everyone decided it wasn't worth the effort." Tae-hyun felt something break inside him. Not sadness. Something harder. Something that would not bend. "Take samples," he said. "Document everything. I want proof of what happened here." "What are you going to do?" Hyunwoo asked. "I'm going to tell everyone," Tae-hyun said. "The whole galaxy. I'm going to make sure they know what they did." They returned to the Dandelion's promise. Tae-hyun went straight to the communications station. He sent a message to Earth Command. Then he sent the same message to the Galactic Assembly, to every species, every government, every news service. The message was simple. "We found them. We found the ones you left to die. And we remember." The message spread across the galaxy in 3 days. Tae-hyun had made sure of that. He sent it on every frequency, every channel. Public and private. Military and civilian. He sent images too. Pictures of the Gentle Dawn. Pictures of the Velkari families frozen together in the darkness. Pictures of the log entries showing which species had heard the call and chosen to do nothing. Earth Command was not happy. They sent angry messages, orders to return immediately, threats of court-martial. Taehyun deleted them all. He kept working. Jiwoo and her team documented everything on the Gentle Dawn. Every detail. Every piece of evidence. They would need it all. The Galactic Assembly sent messages too. Official statements. Carefully worded. They called it a tragedy. They said different times had different standards. They said resources had been limited. They said a lot of things that meant nothing. Other messages came too. Thousands of them. From ordinary people across the galaxy. Some were angry. Some were ashamed. Some thanked the humans for finding the truth. A few threatened violence if Taehyun didn't stop spreading lies. But most just asked one question. Why did nobody help them? Captain, you need to see this, Hyunwoo said. It was the morning of the 4th day. He looked worried. Taehyun went to the bridge. On the screen was a new message. Official. From the Galactic Assembly Central Command. Captain Taehyun, of the human vessel, Dandelion's Promise. You are ordered to cease all unauthorized investigation and return to assembly space immediately. You are charged with interference in protected historical sites and unauthorized salvage. Failure to comply will result in your arrest and the impounding of your vessel. They're threatening us, Jiwoo said. They're scared, Songho said. We made them look bad. We made them look honest, Taehyun said. That's worse. Bo-Ra was studying something on her tablet. I've been going through the medical data. The Velkari physiology was similar to the Thurians. Same temperature requirements. Same atmospheric needs. The Thurians had 3 ships within 2 days of the Gentle Dawn when the distress call went out. They were close enough to help easily. But they didn't, Hyunwoo said. No. They logged the distress call. They ran probability models. They determined that the cost of rescue was not justified for a non-member species. Then, they continued on. Their original course. Taehyun felt the anger again. It was becoming familiar now. A cold weight in his chest. How long did the Velkari last after that? 32 more days. 32 days. They could have been saved for 32 more days. And nobody came. Everyone. The assembly gave them 1 week to comply with the order. After that, they would send enforcement ships. Taehyun ignored them. He spent the week making copies of everything. Every log. Every image. Every piece of data. He sent copies to Earth. To news organizations. To universities. To anyone who might keep the truth alive if something happened to his ship. On the 8th day, 3 assembly enforcement ships arrived. They were big, military vessels, the kind meant to fight wars. The Dandelion's Promise was a research ship. It had no weapons, no armor, just sensors and laboratories. This is assembly enforcement. Power down your vessel and prepare to be boarded. Taehyun looked at his crew. They had all gathered on the bridge. 43 people. They looked scared, but none of them looked like they wanted to run. If we let them take this ship, the evidence might disappear. The story might be buried. What happened to the Velkari might be forgotten again. So what do we do? Jiwoo asked. We go to the assembly ourselves. We make them put us on trial. We make them answer questions in front of the whole galaxy. They'll convict us, Sangho said. Probably. But they'll have to explain why first. And everyone will be watching. Hyunwoo smiled. It was not a friendly smile. I like it. Taehyun opened a channel to the enforcement ships. This is Captain Taehyun. We will comply with your order. We will return to assembly space. But not as prisoners. As witnesses, we demand a formal hearing before the Assembly Council. We invoke the right of testimony under assembly law. All member species are entitled to this right, including humans. There was a long silence. The enforcement commander was probably talking to his superiors, getting new orders. Finally, he responded. Your request is acknowledged. You will be escorted to Assembly Central Station. A hearing will be scheduled. The journey took 12 days. 3 enforcement ships flew with them the whole way, making sure they didn't run, making sure they didn't send more messages. But the messages had already been sent. The galaxy already knew the story. Assembly Central Station was the largest artificial structure in known space, home to 5 million beings from 200 different species. The political heart of galactic civilization. Taehyun had been here twice before, both times as a junior officer. He had been nervous then, overwhelmed by the size and diversity and importance of it all. He wasn't nervous now. They were taken to a holding area, comfortable but secure. Guards outside the door. They waited for 3 days. During that time, more messages came. Earth had sent Ambassador Yuna to represent humanity. She was brilliant, a politician who could argue with anyone and win. She came to see them on the 2nd day. You've created quite a situation, she said. But she was smiling. We found the truth, Taehyun said. You found a weapon, and now we're going to use it. She sat down across from him. The assembly is terrified. This story is spreading everywhere. Protests on a dozen worlds. 3 member species have formally apologized for their role in ignoring the distress call. The Thurian government is claiming they followed proper procedure. They're technically correct, which makes it worse. What's the plan? They want to charge you with historical interference and unauthorized salvage. We're going to put them on trial instead. Make them defend what they did. Or didn't do. The whole galaxy will watch. Can we win? Win? Yuna laughed. It was a sharp sound. Captain, we already won. We won the moment you sent that first message. But now we're going to make them admit it. The hearing was scheduled for the following week. It would be held in the Grand Assembly Chamber, the place where laws were made and wars were voted on. Thousands could attend in person. Billions would watch from across the galaxy. Taehyun spent the time preparing, going over the evidence with Yuna and her team, practicing his testimony. Taehyun, Onan, learning how to answer questions without showing too much emotion. That was hard. Every time he thought about the Velkari, he felt angry. Use it, Yuna said. Let them see you're angry. Humans are known for emotions, for caring about things more than we should. That's our strength here. The assembly thinks emotions are weakness, Taehyun said. I know, Yuna said. That's why they're going to lose. The day came. They walked into the Grand Assembly Chamber. It was enormous, circular, rising in tiers like an ancient amphitheater. Representatives from every species sat in their assigned sections. At the center was a raised platform. That's where Taehyun would stand. The chamber was full, every seat taken, and it was completely silent as he entered. Thousands of beings watching. He could feel their eyes on him. Human eyes, alien eyes, all waiting to see what would happen. Judge Arbiter Melos presided. He was from one of the oldest species in the galaxy, a species that had been traveling the stars when humans were still learning to make fire. His voice was old too, tired, like he had seen too much. Captain Taehyun, you stand accused of interference with protected historical sites and unauthorized salvage. How do you plead? Taehyun looked around the chamber. At all those faces, all those species. Not guilty. And I have questions for this assembly. The chamber erupted. Voices shouting. Some angry. Some surprised. Melos called for order. It took several minutes for the noise to die down. You are not here to ask questions, Captain. Yes, I am, Taehyun said. Because this isn't about what I did. This is about what you didn't do. 800 years ago, 12,000 people died because nobody came to help them. And I want to know why. The Grand Assembly chamber stayed silent for a long moment after Taehyun spoke. Then Councillor Vrex stood up. He was Thurian. His body was crystalline. Light reflected through him in sharp angles. When he spoke, his voice sounded like glass chimes. The human speaks out of turn. This is a hearing about his crimes, not ancient history. Ambassador Yuna stood. She wore formal clothes, dark suit, earth colors. She looked small next to the alien representatives, but her voice carried across the entire chamber. Ancient history? Counselor. The victims have been dead for 800 years, but the crime is still alive. It sits in this room right now. More voices rose, arguments starting. Melos struck his podium 3 times. The sound echoed like thunder. Order. There will be order. He looked at Yuna. Ambassador, explain yourself. The prosecution charges my people with disturbing a historical site. But that site is evidence of a greater crime. Negligent mass death. 47 species heard the distress call from the gentle dawn. 47 species had the ability to help. None did. We have the records, the transmissions, the log entries. We will present them all. Vrex's crystalline body flashed with color. Anger, maybe, or embarrassment. The Velkari were not members of this assembly. We had no legal obligation to assist them. Resources are not infinite. Decisions must be made based on practical considerations. Practical considerations, Taehyun said. The words tasted bitter. Is that what you call it when 12,000 people freeze to death while you do math to see if they're worth saving? Captain, you will address the council properly, Milos said, but his voice was not as stern as before. My apologies, Judge Arbiter. Taehyun took a breath, controlled his anger, used it like Yuna taught him. Let me be proper then. I want the council to explain to me, and to everyone watching, how 47 different species all independently decided that 12,000 lives were not worth a few days of travel. I want to understand the practical considerations that made this acceptable. Yuna activated the main display. Images appeared above the chamber. The gentle dawn. The frozen Velkari. The log entries. Let's start with the Thurians. On day 3 of the distress call, 3 Thurian vessels were within 48 hours of the gentle dawn. They logged the distress call. They analyzed the situation. Then they continued on their planned routes. We followed proper procedure, Vrex said. What procedure? Yuna pulled up a document. Thurian Emergency Response Protocol. Section 7. All distress calls from vessels in immediate danger should be evaluated for response viability. The evaluation should consider distance, resources required, probability of survival, and status of the endangered party. Exactly. We evaluated and determined response was not viable. Why not? The Velkari were not members. The rescue would require resources. The probability of successful recovery was uncertain. Velkari was uncertain. Bora stood up from the witness section. She had been quiet until now. The probability was 97%. I analyzed the damage to the Gentle Dawn. The hull breach was small. A standard repair kit would have fixed it in 3 hours. Any trained crew could have done it. The ship's life support would have lasted another 43 days at that point. There was plenty of time. Vrex's colors shifted again. We did not have that information at the time. You didn't ask for it, Bora said. The Velkari included detailed damage reports in their distress call. You received those reports. You just didn't read them. Because they weren't members. Because helping them would cost you time and supplies. The chamber was getting louder. Representatives talking to each other. Some looked uncomfortable. Others looked defensive. Taehyun could see the divide forming. The older species trying to justify the decision. The younger ones questioning it. Yuna moved to the next case. The Kresh. 4 vessels within 72 hours. They also logged the call and moved on. The Ven. 6 vessels. Same result. The Dral. The Motani. The Kren. Every single species did the same thing. They heard people dying and decided it wasn't their problem. A new voice rose. It belonged to Representative Hera. She was Ven, a species covered in soft fur. They were known for being peaceful, for valuing art and philosophy. Ambassador, you must understand. 800 years ago, things were different. The assembly was younger. We were still learning how to work together. We had rules, but they were not as refined as today. So the rules have changed? Taehyun asked. Yes. Today, we have better protocols for emergency response. Show me. Taehyun pointed at Yuna. She had anticipated this. She pulled up the current Assembly Emergency Response Protocols. Section 4. Emergency response is mandatory for all member species in distress. For non-member species, response is discretionary, based on resource availability and strategic considerations. The chamber went quiet again. The silence was heavy. It hasn't changed, Jiwoo said from the witness section. Her voice was soft, but clear. You still get to decide if non-members are worth saving. You just used fancier words this time. That is not fair, Hara said. We have saved many non-member vessels. When it was convenient, Taehyun said. When it didn't cost too much. When there was something to gain. But the Velkari had nothing to offer. They were just people who needed help. So they didn't matter. Vrex stood again. Captain, you are young. Your species is young. You have been part of this assembly for less than 400 years. You do not understand the complexities of galactic governance. Decisions must be made. Resources must be allocated. We cannot save everyone. Mentor, you didn't try to save anyone. Taehyun's voice was getting louder. He couldn't help it. You didn't even try. 3 hours of work, that's all it would have taken. 3 hours to save 12,000 lives. But you couldn't spare 3 hours for people who weren't members of your club. And what would you have us do? Vrex's colors were bright red now, definitely anger. Should we respond to every distress call in the galaxy? Should we bankrupt ourselves trying to save everyone? Where does it end? Where does it end? It ends when everyone who calls for help gets an answer. Taehyun looked around the chamber, at all the species, all the representatives. My species comes from a harsh world. You call it a death world. Because our planet tried to kill us every day. Storms, predators, disease, disasters. We survived because we learned to help each other. When someone in our tribe was in trouble, everyone came to help. Not because it was profitable, not because it was efficient, because it was right. Because we knew that someday, we might be the ones who needed help. He pointed at the images still floating above the chamber. The frozen Velkari families. These people learned that lesson too late. They learned that, in the cold darkness of space, no one was coming. That all their calls for help were just noise. That their lives had been calculated and found not worth the effort. Ambassador Yuna let his words hang in the air for a moment. Then she spoke. The defense claims, my captain disturbed a historical site. But that site is not history. It's a mirror. It shows us what this assembly really is, what it values, what it's willing to ignore. This is outrageous, Vrex said. We are not on trial here. Yes, you are, Yuna said calmly. Because if you convict Captain Taehyun for finding the truth, you admit the truth is something shameful. Something that should stay hidden, and everyone watching will know what that means. Melos looked troubled. He was old enough to remember when the Velkari were still alive. Maybe he even remembered the distress call. This hearing will adjourn for 3 days. The council will deliberate on how to proceed. 3 days passed slowly. Taehyun and his crew stayed in their quarters. They watched the news feeds. The story was everywhere now. Protests on multiple worlds. Young people demanding change. Old governments defending their choices. The galaxy was having a conversation it had avoided for 800 years. On the third day, they were called back to the chamber. It was just as full as before. Maybe more. Melos looked tired. This council has deliberated. We have reviewed the evidence. We have consulted the law. And we have made a decision. Taehyun held his breath. The charges against Captain Taehyun are dismissed. The Gentle Dawn is declared a protected memorial site. No crime was committed. Melos paused. However, this council also acknowledges that the events 800 years ago represent a failure of our most basic principles. We failed the Valkyrie. And we have failed many others since. This cannot continue. Vrex started to object, but other voices drowned him out. Representatives from younger species. Species that had joined the assembly more recently. Species that still remembered what it was like to be vulnerable. They were calling for change. Ambassador Yuna stood. Humanity proposes the Valkyrie Accord. All distress calls will be answered regardless of species or membership status. And we will establish the Deathworlder Response Network. We will answer the calls you choose to ignore. The chamber erupted into chaos, arguments and debates and threats. But Taehyun wasn't listening anymore. He was looking at the image of the Gentle Dawn, still floating above the chamber. We remembered, he whispered. When everyone else forgot, we remembered. 6 months after the trial, Captain Da-eun stood on the bridge of the Indomitable Hope. The ship was new, built specifically for rescue operations. Faster than most military vessels, tougher than any civilian ship. It had equipment for every type of emergency. Medical bays, repair systems, supplies for 100 different species. Everything needed to answer a call for help. The Indomitable Hope was the first ship of the Deathworlder Response Network. 11 more ships were already operational. 20 more were being built. Earth had poured resources into the project. Other species too. The ones from harsh worlds. The ones who understood what it meant to need help and have no one come. Da-eun was younger than Taehyun, only 34. But she had 15 years of experience in emergency response. She had pulled people from burning buildings, from collapsed mines, from sinking ships in Earth's oceans. She knew what it meant to save lives. She knew what it cost when you failed. Captain, we're receiving a distress call. The voice belonged to Mira. She was the communications specialist. She monitored every frequency in known space, looking for calls that others might miss or ignore. Where? Torval 9. Mining colony. There's been a collapse in the main shaft. 300 workers trapped underground. How far? 41 hours at maximum speed. Da-eun checked the nav computer. What's the assembly response time? The nearest assembly vessel is 8 days out. 8 days. Da-eun felt anger flash through her, but she pushed it down, used it. They won't last 8 days underground. Set course for Torval 9. Maximum speed. Send a response to the colony. Tell them we're coming. The Indomitable Hope jumped to faster than light travel. The stars became streaks of light. Da-eun went to brief her crew. They were an unusual group. Humans mostly, but also Korathi who breathed ammonia instead of oxygen, Stenics from a high-gravity world, Dren who could survive radiation that would kill most species, Deathworlders, all of them, species that had evolved in harsh conditions. Species that understood survival. Jaewon was her best pilot, 26 years old, cocky, reckless, but brilliant. He could fly through conditions that would make other pilots quit. Torval 9, he said, when Da-eun explained the situation. I know that system. Unstable asteroid field between here and there. Most ships go around it. Adds 2 days to the trip. Can we go through it? Jaewon grinned. Oh, I can definitely go through it. The question is whether everyone else wants to. I want to get there before those miners die. If going through the asteroid field does that, then we go through the asteroid field." End quote. You got it, Captain. 41 hours later, they arrived at Torval 9. The colony was small. Maybe 5,000 people total. Mining was dangerous work. Most species didn't want to do it. But some species needed the work, needed the money. So, they took the risk. The colony administrator was a Kren named Voss. He looked exhausted, scared. "Thank you for coming. We didn't think anyone would get here in time. What's the situation? Main shaft collapsed 3 days ago. 300 workers are trapped 2 miles down. We've been trying to dig them out, but we keep hitting more collapses. The whole structure is unstable. We can communicate with them, but their air is running out. Maybe 12 hours left. What about the assembly ship?" Voss looked away. "They said they would come, but 8 days. We told them it was urgent. They said they were responding as fast as regulations allowed." Daun felt the anger again. Regulations. Always regulations. "We need detailed maps of the mine. Structural data. Everything you have." They worked fast. Daun's team analyzed the data. The situation was bad. The collapse had created a maze of unstable tunnels. Traditional rescue methods wouldn't work. They needed something different. "We can't dig from above," Sangho said. He had transferred from the Dandelion's promise to help set up the response network. Now he was the chief engineer. The whole area could collapse. We'd kill everyone. "What about drilling from the side?" "Same problem. Too unstable." Bora had an idea. "What if we don't dig at all? What if we use the existing tunnels? Small teams, light equipment. We map a path through the unstable areas and extract the miners in groups." "That's incredibly dangerous," Sangho said. "Another collapse could happen at any moment, so we move fast." Daun looked at her crew. "I need volunteers. This is dangerous. If something goes wrong, we might not make it out." Every hand went up, all of them. Daun felt something warm in her chest. Pride, maybe. Or hope. "All right. J1. You're with me. Bora, Sangho, you too. We take 5 teams, 20 people each. We go in, we find the miners, we bring them out. Fast and careful." They went in through a service tunnel that was still stable. The mine was dark. Hot. The air tasted like dust and fear. They could hear groaning sounds all around them. The mountain settling, ready to collapse again at any moment. The first group of miners was a mile in. They were scared. Some were injured. But they were alive. "We heard you were coming," one of them said. A human woman. Young. Maybe 20. "We didn't believe it at first. Nobody comes for miners." "We came," Daun said. "Now let's get you out of here." They moved in groups. 20 miners at a time. Slow and steady. The tunnels groaned around them. Rocks fell. Dust filled the air. But they kept moving. One group out. Then another. Then another. They were bringing out the 7th group when it happened. A deep rumbling sound. Rocks and dust everywhere. When it cleared, J1 was on the wrong side of the collapse, with 40 miners. "J1, report." Daun's voice was steady, but her heart was pounding. "I'm okay. The miners are okay. But we're cut off. Can you go back the way you came?" "Negative. That tunnel collapsed too." "We're trapped." Daun looked at Sangho. He was already analyzing the structure. "There's another tunnel, parallel to this one, about 200 meters to the east, but it goes through the most unstable section. It could collapse at any time." "How long? To cut through?" "Maybe 30 minutes. But Captain, I don't recommend it. The risk is too high." Daun thought about it. Thought about leaving J1 and those 40 miners trapped. Thought about regulations and acceptable risk and practical considerations. Then she thought about the Valkyrie. About 12,000 people who died because no one thought they were worth the risk. We're going in. Start cutting. They worked fast. Sang-ho used portable cutting tools to slice through the rock. The tunnel groaned. Rocks fell. The whole structure felt like it was about to come down on their heads. But they kept working. 28 minutes later, they broke through. Jae-won and the miners were waiting on the other side. They looked scared, but grateful. I knew you'd come, Jae-won said. Always, Da-eun said. Now let's get out of here before this whole mountain falls on us. They made it out with 6 minutes to spare. All 300 miners. Safe. Alive. The colony erupted in celebration. People crying. Hugging. Thanking the rescue teams over and over. Voss found Da-eun as she was checking on her crew. The assembly ship just sent a message. They heard we completed the rescue. They're turning back. Saying their response is no longer necessary. Da-eun wasn't surprised. Of course they are. Why did you come? We're not even members. This colony is barely registered. We have nothing to offer Earth. You called for help, Da-eun said simply. The news spread fast. Just like the story of the Gentle Dawn had spread. The Deathworlder Response Network had completed their first major rescue. 300 lives saved. A success that the assembly couldn't ignore. More calls came after that. A plague ship that the assembly had quarantined and abandoned. The response network evacuated all 2,000 passengers and got them medical care. A children's orbital station that lost power. The response network restored it before the life support failed. A colony hit by a solar flare. A cargo vessel caught in a gravity well. A research station attacked by pirates. Every time, the call came. Every time, the Deathworlders answered. Every time. They succeeded where assembly forces wouldn't even try. The assembly tried to ignore it at first. Then they tried to minimize it, calling the rescues lucky. Saying the Deathworlders were taking unnecessary risks. But the people who had been saved didn't care about that. They told their stories. They spread the word. The Deathworlders come when you call. They don't ask if you're a member. They don't calculate if you're worth saving. They just come. 6 months after Torval 9, the response network had 40 ships. 6 months after that, they had 90. Species from harsh worlds were joining, volunteering, bringing their own ships and crews. The network was growing faster than anyone had predicted, and the assembly was starting to worry. Because the question was spreading across the galaxy. The question the Deathworlders had forced everyone to ask. If these humans and their allies can answer every call for help, why can't we? In the Grand Assembly chamber, the debate was fierce. Some species wanted the response network shut down, calling it a threat to assembly authority. Others wanted to join it, to be part of something that actually helped people. The galaxy was changing. And it was changing because a group of Deathworlders had decided that every life mattered. That every call for help deserved an answer. Da-eun watched the news from the bridge of the Indomitable Hope. They were on their way to another call. A station in trouble. People who needed help. She smiled. This was what she had signed up for. This was what it meant to be human. Captain, we're approaching the station, Mira said. Good, Da-eun said. Let them know we're here. Tell them help has arrived. The call came at the worst possible moment. It always did. Taehyun was at a memorial ceremony for the Valkyrie. 1 year since they had found the Gentle Dawn. 1 year since the galaxy had been forced to face what it had done. The memorial station was beautiful. Built from the hull of the Gentle Dawn itself. A place to remember. A place to promise it would never happen again. Then his communicator buzzed. Emergency frequency. He stepped away from the ceremony and answered. Captain Taehyun. Kaehyun. Captain. This is Assembly Emergency Command. We have a catastrophic situation on Thuria. Major tectonic event. The crystal cities are collapsing. 2 million Thurians at risk. We need immediate assistance. Taehyun felt something cold in his chest. Thuria. The Thurian homeworld. Counselor Vrex's world. The species that had calculated the Velkari weren't worth saving. What's the assembly response? Quote, all available assembly vessels are responding. But they're 3 days out. The Deathworlder response network is only 18 hours away. We're requesting your assistance. You're requesting? Taehyun kept his voice neutral. Professional. But inside, he was feeling something else. Something darker. Where's your fleet? Where are all those ships that are too busy for non-members? Captain, please. 2 million lives are at stake. I know what that number means. I've seen it before. On a frozen ship in dead space, 2 million is a lot. But 12,000 was enough to matter too. You just didn't think so at the time. There was silence on the other end. Then a new voice. Older. Tired. Captain Taehyun, this is Counselor Vrex. The crystalline being who had argued so strongly that the Velkari rescue wasn't viable. I am asking for your help. My world is dying. My people are dying. I know what we did. I know what we failed to do. But please, don't let history repeat itself. Taehyun closed his eyes. He thought about the Velkari, about those frozen families, about the calls for help that went unanswered, about 47 species who heard people dying and chose to look away. He could do that now. He could tell Vrex no, could make him understand what it felt like to beg for help and hear nothing back. It would be fair. It would be justice. But it wouldn't be right. He opened his eyes. I need to talk to my people. Taehyun called an emergency meeting. Every response network captain, every senior officer. They gathered in a virtual conference. Faces from a dozen species. All of them Deathworlders. All of them people who understood what it meant to need help. You all heard the call, Taehyun said. Thuria is in trouble. They need rescue. They need us. Why should we help them? The voice belonged to a Korathi captain. Her species breathed ammonia. They had been ignored by the assembly for decades before joining the response network. Because that's what we do, Daun said. She was on her ship, already plotting a course. We answer calls for help. All of them. That's the promise we made. Even when they don't deserve it? Another captain asked. Especially then, Taehyun said. If we only help people who deserve it, we become them. We become the ones who calculate worth, who decide which lives matter. That's not who we are. Bora spoke up from the medical bay. The Thurians are people. They have families, children. Most of them weren't even alive when the Velkari died. They didn't make that choice. They just inherited a system that made it. So we save them, Sangho said. We show them what they should have done. We teach by example. The vote was close. But in the end, it was unanimous. The Deathworlder response network would answer the call. All 47 ships. Everything they had. They would save the Thurians. The journey was dangerous. To reach Thuria in 18 hours, they had to go through a destabilizing wormhole. The kind that was tearing itself apart. Gravity waves. Radiation. Conditions that would destroy most ships. But the response network had ships built for harsh conditions. Crews trained for impossible situations. They could make it. They went in together. 47 ships diving into chaos. The wormhole was worse than the report said. Space itself was breaking, tearing. Ships shook. Alarms screamed, but the pilots held steady. They had trained for this. They were ready. J1 was flying the indomitable Hope. He was grinning despite the danger. This is what we built these ships for. Let's show them what Deathworlders can do. They came out of the wormhole 18 hours and 7 minutes after the call. Right on schedule. Thuria was below them. The planet looked wrong. The beautiful crystal cities were falling, breaking. Millions of Thurians were trapped in the rubble. More were fleeing. But there was nowhere safe to go. Assessment, Daun said. 2 million Thurians in immediate danger, Mira reported. The tectonic plate is still shifting. We have maybe 6 hours before the whole region collapses completely. 6 hours to evacuate 2 million people. Daun did the math. It was impossible. We need to stabilize the ground first. Buy time. Sang-ho was already working on it. I can use the ship's gravity generators. Project a stabilizing field. It won't hold forever, but it might buy us a few more hours. Do it. All ships, focus on evacuation. Pull people out of the rubble. Get them to safe zones. We work until everyone is safe, or we can't work anymore. The rescue was a nightmare. The crystal cities were collapsing in slow motion. Beautiful structures that had stood for thousands of years turning to dust. Thurians were trapped everywhere. Under rubble, in buildings about to fall, on platforms hanging over chasms. The response network teams went in. They worked in conditions that would kill most species. Humans crawling through spaces too tight for others. Stenix lifting rubble that was too heavy. Dren working in areas where the radiation would be fatal in minutes. Everyone doing the impossible because it needed to be done. Taehyun led one of the ground teams. He was pulling Thurians out of collapsed buildings. They looked at him with confusion. Fear. Why was a human here? Why was he helping? He didn't explain. He just worked. One building was about to collapse completely. Sensors showed 50 Thurians trapped inside. But the entrance was blocked. The walls were cracking. It would come down in minutes. We can't get to them in time, Hyunwoo said. He was leading the security team, protecting the rescue workers. Then we make time. Taehyun looked at the building, at the cracks spreading through the crystal. We need to support the structure. Keep it standing long enough to get them out. How? Our ships. Taehyun called Daun. I need a ship to hold up a building. Taehyun. That's insane. I know. Can you do it? There was a pause. Then Daun laughed. It was a wild sound. Yes. Give me 2 minutes. The indomitable hope came in low. J1 flying like he was threading a needle. The ship settled against the building, using its hull to brace the collapsing structure. The building groaned. The ship's hull screamed. But it held. You have 5 minutes, J1 said. After that, I can't guarantee the ship will survive. Taehyun's team went in fast. They found the Thurians huddled in the center. Scared. Confused. We're evacuating you. Move now. They got 43 out. Then 47. 49. The building was shaking. The ship's alarms were screaming. Time's up, J1 said. We have to go now. One more Thurian. A child. Trapped under a fallen beam. Taehyun ran back. The building was coming down. He could feel it. He grabbed the child. Pulled. The beam wouldn't move. Hyunwoo appeared beside him. Together they lifted. The beam moved. The child was free. They ran. The building collapsed behind them. The indomitable hope pulled away just in time. Dust and crystal shards everywhere. But they made it. All 50 Thurians. Safe. The rescue went on for 9 hours. Every minute felt like forever. Every life saved felt like a victory. Every one they couldn't reach felt like failure. But they kept working. Kept trying. Because that's what they did. In the end, they saved 1.7 million. 300,000 were lost. The numbers were terrible. But without the response network, all 2 million would have died. The assembly ships arrived 3 days later. Too late to help. Too late to matter. Counselor Vriex found Taehyun after it was over. The crystalline being looked different now. Cracked. Dimmed. You came, he said. His voice was quiet. After everything we did. Everything we didn't do. You came. People needed help. Taehyun said. He was exhausted. His body hurt. His heart hurt. That's all that matters. Why? I would not have come for you. 800 years ago, we heard the Velkari calling. We heard them dying. And we did nothing. We calculated that they weren't worth our time, our resources. Why didn't you do the same to us? Ruth. Taehyun looked at the ruined city. At the Thurians, being treated by Bo-Ra's medical teams. At the response network, ships still searching for survivors. Because if we did, we'd become you. We'd become the people who decide which lives matter. And we can't do that. We won't, even when we deserve it, especially then. Taehyun turned to face Vrex. The Velkari died because no one thought they mattered enough. But they did matter. Every single one of them. And so do you. All of you. That's the lesson. That's what we're trying to teach. Vrex was silent for a long time. Then his colors shifted. Something softer. Something like shame or hope. What do we do now? You learn, Taehyun said. You remember. You make sure this never happens again. 3 months later, the Galactic Assembly passed the Velkari Accord. Every distress call would be answered. Every life would matter. Member or not. Rich or poor. Powerful or weak. If someone called for help, help would come. The vote was unanimous. The Gentle Dawn Memorial Station became the center of the new system. Ships from every species stopped there, paid their respects, made their promises. The response network grew to 200 ships, then 500. Species that had once calculated worth were now racing to save lives. Taehyun stood in the memorial station 1 year after Thuria. Jiwoo was with him. And Hyunwoo. And all the others who had been there at the beginning. They looked at the eternal flame burning at the center. The names of all 12,000 Velkari, inscribed in crystal around it. We did it, Jiwoo said softly. We changed them. No, Taehyun said. We reminded them. They knew once. They just forgot. We reminded them that every life matters. That every call for help deserves an answer. Think it'll last? Taehyun thought about it. About the Thurians working alongside humans now. About the new protocols. About the ships being built. About the promises being made. I don't know. But we'll keep reminding them. As long as we have to. They stood in silence. Remembering the ones who died because no one came. Honoring the promise they had made. The promise that would never be broken again. In the darkness of space, a distress call went out. A ship in trouble. People in danger. And before the call had finished broadcasting, 3 response network ships were already on their way. Help was coming. It always would now. Because the Deathworlders had taught the galaxy a simple lesson. When someone calls for help, you answer. Not because it's profitable, not because it's efficient, but because it's right. Because every life matters. Because no one should die alone in the dark. Calling for help that never comes. The forgotten had been remembered. And they would never be forgotten again.